Elizabeth Rubin. She's a veteran correspondent who's been covering the war in Afghanistan since the beginning. And a big part of her experience came 2 years ago when she embedded with a U.S. battalion in the remote Korengal Valley. She wrote a seminal piece about that experience for the New York Times Magazine, and she also captured riveting video footage, including a deadly ambush she witnessed by Taliban insurgents. This is the first time this video has ever been shown, and it really brings home why Afghanistan continues to be such a tough and debated war. Elizabeth, before we have you describe some of these scenes, can you tell us why you went to the Korengal Valley to begin with?
Originally, I wanted to do a story about airstrikes and the effect that they were having on civilians. Repeatedly, there were these enormous civilian deaths at after these airstrikes. What would happen is a small group of American soldiers, whether they were special forces or infantry, would get stuck in a fight and they would call in for help. You call in for help, and oftentimes by the time the bomb drops, the Taliban have left. Or what happened when I was there and in the months preceding that, the Taliban were infiltrating into the civilian areas. So they would attack the soldiers from a civilian house. So I decided to embed with a unit that was in heavy combat all the time, and that was ostensibly dropping the most bombs in that region.
Alright, we gotta find out where this sure is taking place between Kandalay and Chachal, because I think some Taliban leaders are part of that shura. They're trying to transport weapons. Don't say anything about it though, because it'll fucking spook them. Just get Jabbar over to me so I can talk to him.
So that was Battle Company.
That was Battle Company, and I was with Dan Kearney, who was the captain of the company.
He's an incredible character. I mean, you write about him in your New York Times article.
He's a very honest, open guy who talks like you and I would think, except that we're not soldiers having to, do that job. But his way of understanding it and explaining it and thinking about it and processing it and always asking questions. Am I doing this right? Do I understand this village? Do I understand these people? Is there an anthropologist out there I could talk? He would have me email an anthropologist who'd lived there for 12 years to see if he could understand the place better. And, he could also talk pretty rough at times, which is just like, if I have to kill him, I'm going to kill him.
Main element.
Elizabeth, I know you were embedded with Battle Company for 2 months, and you were there for something called Operation Rock Avalanche. Tell us about Rock Avalanche.
Yakachina, which is where Rock Avalanche took place, was a known insurgent hideout. What happens is Slasher, one of the planes, comes in, and the pilot is basically, he's saying, look, I see the houses you're talking about, and I see guys coming out, and then, as they're getting ready to fix a target, then they see guys going into another house. So the pilot says, are you sure you want to do this? Are you signing off on collateral damage? And Dan says, yes, I want them dead. The thing that happens is the radio communication stops between the insurgents. So they know they've killed some insurgents, but they also know that there's going to be civilians dead. I would say around 6 a.m. we get a call from Lieutenant Matt Piosa, who's down in the village. He's with one of the elders.
Battle 2-6, Battle 6, over.
He calls up and he says, we've got dead women and children. I think 5 dead, 11 wounded.
Put 2-6 on, over.
And so Dan is, he drops his head. He's completely depressed because he knows that no matter how many insurgents he may have killed, at this point, that's what's going to matter. They decide to go down to the village to talk to the elders and explain why they did what they did.
I'm Captain Kearney. I'm the U.S. commander for the Korengal. Haji Zawarkhan and I have a pretty good relationship. He comes up to the Shura every Friday, and I talk with all the elders of the Korengal, except there's rarely anybody there from the village of Yakachina. Based on all the assets that I have flying up above, all the airplanes, all the helicopters, and all the satellites, I was able to pinpoint up to like 50 ACM, 50 insurgents that were in and around your village. Based on them flying around and individuals in the northern Korengal telling me that you guys have individuals in Yakachina that want to cause harm to U.S. forces and ANA forces and are against the government, I came down into Yakachina to push them out and to kill them. The first building that I engaged, the next morning when I get there, I find 5 RPGs in it. and you guys aren't fighting the Russians anymore, and you're not hunting goats or sheep. So you guys don't need these types of weapons. He's gone. You bring that guy up to the cop, and I'll talk to him. You guys have insurgents, or you have miscreants, or you have enemy guys that are in here, and they're going to cause you guys to be hurt because of it if you don't help me out.
I was just thinking, he's just in an impossible situation. It's like watching an actor. He's playing this role that he has to play, and yet I know also inside there's part of him that knows how completely absurd this whole thing is. These are very, very conservative mountain people, and even for a soldier to look at their women washing their clothes in the river is an affront that needs to be avenged. So every single time we would go on a patrol, we would see women at the river. So that's the mentality that you're dealing with. And, right after Dan is talking to them, you have an engineer, a provincial reconstruction team guy comes and talks to them and tells them how he's going to be bringing them this $12 million road. And you see these stony faces, on their part, which is just like, go away. We don't want you here. And what we hear on the radio after we leave is the insurgents are leaving the elders up to decide what they want. Do they want to accept the Americans' offer, or do they want revenge for the deaths of their family members? Eventually it comes down that the elders have decided to fight.
And it was just a couple of days later when you were out with some of the troops from Battle Company when I guess that revenge came. Can you tell us what happened?
We are on what's called the Avaskar Ridge. So there were about 25 soldiers there. A lot of the soldiers were cutting open their MREs, having lunch, chewing tobacco, relaxing a little bit, when suddenly there was an ambush that came from 3 different sides.
6, I copy all. Right now we're going to put some 203 into this draw where we believe these guys may be moving. Great. Who's that?
Who's that?
6 is 2-6. I'm maneuvering 2 teams.
Real drama that was going on was actually about 50 to 100 yards away.
What are they saying?
You came to run up there and take that fucking hill. Don't wreck his fucking head. And they pushed Wildcat over the hill.
Roger.
That was done, and he was screaming to Piosa that Wildcat 1, which is the call sign, the radio call sign for Sergeant Larry Rubin, has been hit. And Sergeant Rice has been hit.
Wildcat 1, this is 2-6. I need you to mark your position. We're going to come in on hot on 2251 with Cats, over.
Then you hear Piosa is calling Wildcat 1. Wildcat 1, he wants him to tell him where he is.
Battle 6.
Of course, he can't reach him.
Hey, Wildcat 1, this is 2-6, over. Yes.
Hey, you want me to stay here?
Yes, because we're taking fucking rounds up there.
Hey, let's go. I'll wait for him. You go. Throw it on.
Is it Rubin?
Yes. Where's his weapon?
That's why I was asking.
Did they take off with it?
I don't know. What about it's not? Where's not?
And they were all, for the next 24 hours, kind of in shock.
Calm down. We're going to do. We're going to take those 2 wounded in action down there. We're going to get them to LZ Eagles. Alright? We're going to get Sergeant Rubin out of here. Alright? I need you to take charge of that. You're the man. Alright, the fucking man. Got this. Alright? You got security here? 2-3. See you. You got 2-3. I want you to got security here.
They had to also go back into the fight. 2 days later, the next platoon was ambushed, and 2 more soldiers were killed and more wounded, so the fight wasn't over at that point.
The whole experience must have been a lot for you to try to make sense of. And I know you went back to Afghanistan to see these same soldiers who are still, most of them I guess were still there with Battle Company 9 months later. Did you feel like you had to go back?
Yeah, I wanted to go back before the end of the deployment because I'd left in a way at their lowest point. I went to see how the soldiers were doing, what the effect that whole operation had on them, and what had happened to the Korengalis.
There's a moment where you were filming on your second trip Sergeant Clenard. He was on his bed, and his best buddy, Rugal, died in the ambush that you were a part of. Let's watch some of that.
What did you think the reason for fighting in Afghanistan was?
They were just saying, to go, everybody to find Bin Laden and the guys who were behind 9/11 and stuff. So,
Does it feel like that now?
I mean, right now, like I said, now it's just to go, honestly, kill as many guys as we can for Larry. That's what this fight for me is now. It's more, like I told you, it's more personal.
Mm-hmm.
Before it was, okay, go find these guys, so no more terrorist attacks happen like that, But now, since October 23rd, it's pretty much out vengeance, it's out to get the guys that have killed my friends, So that's why I'm still fighting, I guess.
Yeah. Tell me about this.
It's a tattoo that Larry had. It's in Russian. It says in memory of my fallen brother, and then the date he was killed. He had it on his arm, and then once he was killed, as a team, we all decided, to get it.
Elizabeth, when you return, you also check back with Captain Dan Kearney. How was his mission going?
There was not very much progress in terms of winning over the hearts of the Korengalis. The other thing is that Dan did not have a lot of guys giving him much intelligence. Sometimes Zawar Khan, sometimes Shamshir Khan, the old man, he was like in his 90s. They would give him bits of stuff here and there, but basically he didn't have any intelligence from people.
You got that sense. I mean, there was a scene where you and Dan met with Zawar Khan, and it seemed like, you've been gone for 9 months, but it was like more of the same.
Do you guys think that the Korengal Valley right now is better than the past? And it's better than it was?
And then you actually kind of chased after Zawar Khan, and you talked to him. Let's watch some of that.
Zawar Khan Kaka, what do you want from the Americans?
نو خود په خود پاتې کېږي هر شی راته جوړوي لا پیږي چې دا شی جوړول ته امنیت خراب دی امنیت خراب ټول پاتې.
And what would happen if the Americans left here?
امریکایان چې دي د نړۍ کورنګل په خپل باندې کې نه دي وس نه دی جوړ دی وسه کې چې جوړ کی او نه امنیت رانه وسته چې موږ ته کار وشي امنیت رانه کې په خپل کار باندې کې دی وته بیا دلته چې بیا دغه راشي دا موسسې راشي کار کولی بیا دی چې نه بیا جنګ څوک نه کوي جنګ دوی سره کوي.
There's much more to explore on our website. Discuss the world and tell us what you think of our stories from a small planet at pbs.org/frontlineworld.